That's coverage of E3 2013 as a guy is about to get crushed by our jib cam. Barely got out there. I'm delighted to be joined by Ru and Andrea, the founders of Ready at Dawn. Guys, thank you so much for coming on stage.
Pleasure.
The Order 1866, there's a big piece of London behind me which is making me feel a little bit homesick. You guys have shown off a bunch of gameplay in the past couple of months, and then last night we got to see a little bit more that we hadn't seen before. For the folks at home who've never seen this game, can you just explain what exactly it is from a sort of an overall standpoint?
So the Order 1886 is our take on our history, basically. It's an alternate version of our history where mankind has kind of split genetically a long time ago. And this war between man and half-breeds have been going on for centuries now, and we're joining basically the game and the IP in this game in 1886, where the knights are fighting basically against the half-breeds.
This game, does it take part predominantly in London or entirely in London?
Entirely in London. That was kind of the drive at the beginning of the game, was to make London feel alive the way it was back then.
Awesome. It looks like one of those games. We can actually look at the gameplay of it now. It looks like one of these games that is people will look at as graphically the reason to play a next-gen title. The stuff you're doing with particles and lighting is really impressive. Can we go in and have a look at something now?
Absolutely. It's been a labor of love. I mean, since we started, you can see from the visuals and all that. This was the onus at the very beginning. It was to showcase what the PlayStation 4 could do through this game, visually, graphically, technologically. This was really the drive behind creating this.
So what's going on here in this scene? Just set the scene for us.
So we are basically seeing the squad of knights in Chapter 3, as you see, entering Whitechapel and fighting against what's been happening in London in the last few years is the rise of the rebellion. We try to depict that rebellion the same way that the uprise of social classes happened back then. So we try to stay true to a few things from history. But here, the rebellion group of just militiamen are basically going against the government at this time.
You having some controller problems? Yeah. All right. This is E3 at its best. We got some Bluetooth controller problems.
Yeah.
Let's go. Let's keep going.
It's moving on its own. I can't.
All right, come back to us. We probably got some B-roll we can go to or something like that. So this game, it looks incredible visually. From what we've seen here, from what we saw at the Sony conference as well, it looks quite linear though. Is this a very scripted story piece of storytelling, or how open are the environments you're in?
So yeah, I mean the idea for us was really to basically make it a story-driven game. Introducing an IP is always tricky. You always choose the medium you want to do it with.
Yeah.
You can go multiplayer, you can go co-op, you can do multiple things, but for us, the single-player path was the right one to introduce the IP to the world for the first time. And so let's see what happens in the future, but this game is going to be a linear, story-driven game.
Cool. I want to remind the folks at home, if you have any questions at all, at Danny O'Dwyer on Twitter, and I'll make sure I get it to the guys here on stage. I've got a bunch of questions myself. I used to live in London. I love Whitechapel. I used to go out drinking there all the time. Did you guys go there to do any recce's and see what the place is like?
We actually took most of the team, all the artists, all the animators. A lot of the guys on our team, being Americans, don't get out of the country much.
Yeah, sure.
So we took them all there for, it was a couple of weeks. And with lots of cameras, they took literally tens of thousands of pictures of everything. We went to every museum, they even got to visit those abandoned, 19th century subway stations.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
wow,
we were lucky enough to get led into places that are really representative of that period, and they were able to get all this fine little detail about what made that particular era so interesting and so colorful.
I think the important thing is that to understand London, just like you do, you have to live through it. I mean, of course, the time is not enough to do that, but it was amazing to see them finally understand what it felt like to live in London. And more to your point, by the way, the drinking, we did that too while we were there.
We're showing this at the moment over here, the demo that you guys showed last night. So this is when you met one of the, is it fair to call them werewolves? Or?
Absolutely. Well, lycans, werewolves. The interesting thing about this, what we showed yesterday, and I think it was, we actually demoed them pretty cold. It was really about answering that question we posed a year ago.
Yeah.
We showed a trailer, there was figures behind the fog, and really the question was always what was behind the fog. The last answer to that was what we showed yesterday, the reveal of the lycan. In our world, lycans are again, the evolution of mankind, where they've taken on traits like lichens do, and people have equated them to werewolves because they look like that.
Okay. Are you fighting random humans and lichens, or are you just fighting lichens and lichens in their human form?
No, you're finding random humans in the rebellion.
Okay.
And the lichens as well. We really wanted to build a world that was not so black and white, not like one party against another.
Yeah.
But introduce that third group that basically came into play where everybody's fighting really against each other all the time. And that's the tricky thing. It's like you have humans to contend with, but at the same time you have all these lichens and these half-breeds to contend with that as well.
If you just joined us on the stream, we're playing the Order 1886. We had a little bit of trouble with the version we have here. Apologies from us on that end. But we're looking here at what you guys showed at the conference. So this is a situation in which it looks like it's part of a sort of a scripted piece of gameplay. How much of that is this sort of stuff, and how much of it is the more open environments that we were looking at before?
A big part of the game is pacing, and we really wanted to give the player a variety of almost different gaming experiences, but all seamlessly integrated together. You will do a lot of combat, a lot of fighting, but then the mood will change, and you will get into a place where there will be a lot more exploration. Like the demo that was done last night, it's actually maybe a 10, 12-minute exploration phase before, with certain elements of cinematic, power that come through occasionally. But last night we were just rushing through it because we had to get to the,
Yeah, I guess that's a problem with press conferences as well.
That's right. So,
but yeah, I mean, like as far as the game is concerned, it is that pacing that's important. And of course, at the core, we are a third-person, shooter.
Yeah.
But we are going to meld in a few different gameplay mechanics we haven't talked about. The reason we introduced the Lycan also is to give you kind of that idea that you can shoot him, but as you see in the demo that we've shown, you don't really do much to him by just using regular weapons. So we are going to show people a different mode of gameplay that we haven't talked about a lot, that will kind of deepen the experience overall. And at the same time, for us, knowing that the core is a third-person action adventure, action shooter, we knew that people would understand that. What we really wanted to express through the little bits we're going to do in the press and marketing is really show what's the new things that we're doing for PlayStation 4, and that's kind of the drive behind doing this.
I guess when you're pacing a game, you also have to pace your marketing to make sure that people get the right message.
Absolutely.
You talked about the weapons as well. One of the most incredible things that I saw in the piece of gameplay that we had was the thermite gun. That effect of stuff, the way in which you can sort of light up an area and keep it heated up. What other types of weapons are you going to have in the Order?
Well, there's going to be lots of them. We're not giving away all the details, since the next few months is going to be really focusing on gameplay reveals. You're going to see a lot more, but there's going to be a whole bunch of really cool weaponry, each one with a little twist, just like the thermite gun had. So
one of them actually that you see in the game is the arc gun. The arc gun,
right.
it basically shoots a lightning bolt. The interesting thing about this weapon is that if you look and do some research into all of them, like we did, all of them are based on technologies that exist. Thermite, you can actually get thermite and light it up, and that's what it'll do. It'll just flare up, and it's aluminum iron oxide that does that. The arc gun is just a twist on what Tesla's work was in the 19th century and the 1800s, where he was able to basically harness, in so many ways, like a bolt of light, bolt of electricity. What if you could use that as a weapon? Every single one of our weapons has that depth and has that research behind it.
Here's some of the thermite action happening here as well.
If you notice when Isabel shoots at the beginning, she literally fries one of the enemies. The light gun disintegrates them, pulverizes.
Excellent. Yeah, there's some of the destructible environments as well.
Absolutely, and that's what the great thing about the thermite weapon. The thermite weapon is a bunker buster. Is a cover buster.
Yeah.
You basically can shoot over them, even if they're in cover, and rain down fire to whoever's behind, so that you can get them out.
On the wall behind them or something.
And that's the twist in gameplay. You can break cover with them, you can get people that are behind cover in certain scenarios, but of course you have to be careful with your ammunition because you're going to run out very quickly.
I've got an absolute load of questions coming in via Twitter. If you have any questions for the guys here at Danny O'Dwyer. First question, somebody wants to know what your workout schedule is.
Me?
How do you make video games and also be that?
Oh, it's actually how I stay sane.
Really?
Yeah. Everybody has to have. He meditates. I pump iron, but
I like it. You're like the yin and yang of having a good.
I've actually been asked to write a a series of videos which I call bodybuilding for game developers.
That'd be great.
I might work on it next year.
Yeah, you should do that. We'll premiere it on GameSpot.com. Believe me, I could do with some work here myself. How often are the QuickTime elements present in the gameplay? Stuart Hopkins asked.
It's very kind of sparse. The important thing for us for the QuickTime events is that it's not to actually have them for the sake of having them.
Okay.
It's literally to have them where we can build interactivity into something that otherwise would be non-interactive. Games have a tendency to have very long 5-minute non-interactive moments. We build those QuickTimes not as a, it's a necessity. It's more of a, that portion of that normally what you would see as a cinematic could be interactable, so why not make it interactable? That's why we added them there. We made sure that it didn't become this kind of like heavy-handed thing that we wanted to put in the game.
Well, I guess graphically, what you have here is the cutscenes in the gameplay are they're almost identical, or they are identical.
Completely.
So
in fact, even everything that you see simulated during the cutscenes, normally in games, especially games on the previous generation, what you had to do was pre-calculate everything so you could up the graphical quality as much as possible. Thanks to the PS4 and thanks to the extra resources that we have now and the new technology we have now, we can do everything. Everything that the characters interact with is still the cloth, the way the cloth behavior changes, the destructible things. Even when they're in movies, everything is still simulated in real time. And technically speaking, we can change at will. We could change costumes. We could change anything we want about cinematics.
Excellent. Question here from Keelan is asking, is there any multiplayer in the Order 1886? Is there any co-op or versus, or is this a single-player
It's
game?
a single-player game. I'll tell you the truth. When we started working on this IP, we explored every single avenue. What do we want to do for this game to come out for the first time? The way we want it to. And of course, as much as we had that conversation very early on, we decided to make this a single-player game.
A lot of people from London are up in the evening asking questions. This is set in, you've got cultural touchstones here with London, a lot of it's happening. You mentioned Tesla as well and all that stuff. Questions, Jack the Ripper and Jekyll and Hyde. Is any of this stuff getting pulled in at all?
All I can tell you is that we needed to ground this in reality.
Yeah.
I mean, very early on, the story was crafted so that there were so many moments and places and people from the real world that would be injected into this. I'm really waiting to see what the players are going to think of it. I can't really reveal too much right now about what it is, but you can imagine that for that era, it was one of the richest eras in London, actually.
Yeah.
London was the center of the world during that era. We're going to make sure that we really delve into that depth of the life, the people, and the events of that world.
Why was it you went for this game? You could have, I'm assuming that you were presented with an opportunity to make a game for a new console. You have this powerhouse. You guys have a lot of talented developers at your studio. Why was it that you went for this particular place and time and this type of gameplay? How does that come about?
It's a very simple answer. It sounds trite, but the reality is that Rue is a, history geek. I guess I can say that word. He's fanatical about this stuff and spent many years developing this world, these characters. The grand vision for the game is absolutely incredible. The level of detail and the extent and the scope and the emotional punch that, as a whole, the whole story arc has. And when he presented it to the team, we all loved it. We all we really like games that take us to these kind of, remote places in history, things that are really different, and it was just too exciting for the team, and that's how we work. Whatever gets the most excitement out of these artists, it's implicitly what we need to pursue, because it's what's going to result into the most striking and the most impactful work.
How long have you been working on it already, Don?
The game itself, we've been working on it now for a little bit more than 3 years, 3.5 years. And stories, I mean, they were just things that we've been putting together for a long time. It actually has been a labor of love, because back in 2005, 2006, just little short stories about the world, about the alternate history, all of those things melded into this game, where in the beginning it wasn't really just about the Order, it was more of a timeline of a lot of things that happened throughout the last 2,500 years. And finding that thread through it was really when this game started. It's drawing a thread through all these events and all these stories, all these different characters, all this lore, the myth and all that. When that thread came together is when we knew that we had something that we were all passionate about, where every single person at Radio Dawn brings something to it, and they're like, it becomes our world, it becomes us.
You seem to be very confident about showing the game off now at this stage. Obviously, it's been something you've been working on for a long time. How close are you to release, and how eager are you to show more of this game?
We're very eager to show more. I mean, we're showing little snippets because we have only a chance to show a small snippet.
Sure.
But at the same time, I mean, the game, we announced the release date yesterday. The game is going to basically be released on the 20th of February, 2015. So the push that people talked about, was only a few months. It was really for us to get a chance to deliver on our promise of making the game the way we wanted to and deliver on the promise that we made.
Yeah, a very wise friend of ours once said, once the game is on the shelf, or in this case, it's ready to download now, all you can make is excuses for the things you didn't get to do.
Yeah.
And, we had a certain vision in mind, and we wanted to make sure we had enough time to deliver on the vision that the gamers were expecting.
Awesome. Ru and Andrea from Ready-A-Thon Studios, absolute pleasure to have you guys on. Can't wait. I'm actually done on this stage. I'm going to see if I can go queue up and play 1886. You sneak me in? Perfect. The one perk. I don't get much time on the show floor. I'm usually here, so that's awesome.
It's worth it.
We have a bunch more stuff coming up here in the Samsung stage. I'm going to go over to the GameSpot stage later. I'm going to be there from 4 o'clock with Skylanders, Sonic Boom, Lich and Battle Mage, and a bunch more. But stick here on GameSpot.e3.com. I believe next up is a demo of Project Morpheus. Check it out.